Tell them who we are, Bob.
Well, as Jackie Gleason said, away we go. Boy, Jack, I miss all them people. You know, that's the sad part about living so long. You lose so many of your friends. Of course, you lose some of your enemies, too.
I was going to say, it might be worth it.
You lose some of your enemies. Of course, if you got the right kind of friends, folks, you don't need no enemies.
Well, that must be the kind I got so many of them.
That's probably the kind I got, too. And
are you going to go? Are you going to go?
They're getting kind of rough. They of course, stole Ronnie's radio out of his truck. No wonder it wasn't your radiator. A radiator.
Hush, before they think of something.
Huh?
Hush, before they think of that.
Yeah, your radiator is worth more money than that radio.
Are you ready to go vote?
Yeah, I'm ready to go vote. I'm going to go tomorrow. Is tomorrow the last day?
No, next Tuesday's the last day.
I mean for early voting.
I don't know.
I think tomorrow's the last day for early voting, yeah.
I don't figure on voting.
You're not going to vote? Well, I'm not going to probably vote for every selection.
Well, I can't think of anybody I want to vote for. Romney's going to get in Tennessee. They don't need my vote. That's the only one there I'd vote for. I ain't crazy about him.
All right. Well, we might give him a little bit bigger mandate.
Them mandates is dangerous sometimes.
They might put another Oak Ridge up here in
well, they'd steal my land to put it on.
Right. Oh, let me tell you, let me tell you, I heard something today that I probably knew anyhow, and you may have heard it too. You know, there are 6 million families in this country under the poverty level. Okay? Now, counting what the federal government spends and the state spends, they spend $61,000 per family.
Yeah.
Now, why don't they just do away with all the social services and everything? And since the poverty level is what, 19,000, something like that per family?
Now, yeah, I think so.
I think so.
I've been under it so long, I've
yeah,
lost count.
Well, why don't they just give those 6 million families $20,000 apiece, and actually they would be saving $40,000 per family.
Yeah.
You know, just to give them 20, just send them a check.
Yeah, get them up above the poverty level.
Yeah, that'd get them above the poverty level, because we're spending $61,000 per family and can't get them up above the poverty.
You want me to tell you why? If they just sent them a check, they'd starve to death. They'd spend it in 15 minutes.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah. Well, no, they wouldn't. I'll tell you what to do. They would buy additional food stamps with them, because they're so used to selling their food stamps, they wouldn't feel good about spending money, so they'd buy additional food stamps so they can sell them and get money.
Well, I hadn't thought of that, but you may be right.
So, boy, was old Neil Bork following in my footsteps yesterday.
What was he doing?
He was talking about all them people waddling up to the drink machine at
there we go again.
drink machine
That's
at the grocery.
BOBANDREWS 871-2019.
Right now,
you fat people
he said that. He said statements like that was what got him into the Radio Hall of Fame.
Well, I just soon pass on it.
But he did. He said the exact same things that I said 4 or 5 years ago. It got me in trouble.
Yeah, I have to hide in some places still over there.
But I'm looking for him fit and trim to be going on 80 years old. You know, I'm not.
We're all going on 80.
Yeah, well, sure. I was going on 80 when I was born.
Yeah, I was hoping to get to 90 myself.
Right, yeah.
I consider myself going on 90.
Right, but you know, my life expectancy is longer now
than it was when you were born.
Than when I was born.
Yeah.
Or when I was 50.
Well, what they should have done is drowned you as an infant. They ought to put you in a sack and throw you off the bridge.
Well, you know, They used to teach all them little puppies and cats to swim that way.
Yeah, in a sack.
But I'll tell you, I enjoy life. I love every day, even though it's cold as whizzes out there. I could say it was cold some other way, but you know, all them well diggers up there in North Dakota, they ain't digging for water no more. They're digging for oil.
Well, could be. I'd like to point out to you that
Well, now they have to change it from a well digger's caboose to an oil driller's caboose. It's colder than an oil driller's caboose.
I remember something about being cold, something pertaining to witches. I don't remember just how that went.
Witches.
Yeah, witches.
Well, yeah. I imagine that would be pretty tough. I mean, they got so cold riding that broom in inclement weather.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to buy my ex-wife a broom for Halloween. Reckon I'll survive if I do that.
I don't know if you like a used one. I know a woman's got 3 or 4. You snore even better than I do now.
Huh?
I used to snore even better than I do now. I'll tell you what we could do. We could just remember when you're out there in this cold weather and snow in Virginia, West Virginia, and in the Smoky Mountains. 7 inches Mount LeConte, they said. Just remember, if them Katie did said it's going to be a bad winter. They told me that 4 months ago.
Right.
And I predicted it. It's all global warming's fault.
It's what?
Global warming's fault.
You think so?
Yeah. I'm sure it is.
Maybe. You know, with all...
It's global warming's fault when it was hot, and it's global warming's fault when it's cold.
Sure.
It's global warming's fault when it's just lukewarm.
Right.
And if everything's going just right, it's climate change.
Right. Well, you know, the Democrats are trying to convince everybody that the Republicans want you to swim in oil, you know, in your rivers and in your beaches. That they want you to breathe dirty air, you know, from coal-fired pollution mainly. And, you know, they're just, we'll never survive if this country goes Republican.
Well, I tell you what I'm always amazed at is how short people's memories are. I can remember being pretty young and gullible. I was just about 25, 26 when I was kind of worried that because of all the pollution and the disruption we had because of man's activity that we were on the verge of a new ice age. Because that's, I mean, they were just predicting that right and left. And that was a whole lot more worrying to me than being warm to start with, because you can't raise a tater in froze ground.
No.
But just because it's warm don't mean they ain't something you can't find to eat. I ain't worried about being flooded. They talk about that all the
you know, global warming.
But them same fools that fell for that before, I call them fools. I fell for it, but I wised up. They still believe it.
I know that. I know. I remember them forecasting very well in the late 60s and 70s that we were going to have an ice age, you know, that we were going to have a global winter all over, you know.
Well, they had the late great planet Earth. Maybe that's not the right one. Maybe it was the what is it? The something of Rome. Club of Rome. They were predicting that we'd be out. We couldn't feed ourselves. We couldn't sustain the population by 1990, I believe. We wouldn't be able to do it. There was some other guy that had studied stuff like that for a long time. He made a bet. These guys were pretty well known, and they had the opposite views on resources. And one guy was predicting that we'd be out of so many different kinds of raw material, you know, no copper, no nothing, you know. And he predicted that not only would we have more of those necessary materials, that the price would actually be cheaper. And they made a public bet, not a whole lot of money, maybe supper or something.
Right.
But by the time this thing played out, and I can't remember who these guys were, but by the time it played out, they actually had more of these listed resources because the price had gone up as they got more scarce, just like oil, and it caused people to find new ways to prospect and to produce and to extract, and they had an abundance. They had more supplies of every one of these things that they had listed, and the price adjusted for inflation was actually cheaper because they had more supply.
Right. I'm sure that's
now,
right.
I don't
remember who made the bet, nor do I remember the bet being made, but I'm sure that's true.
Well, now we've got right now, we've got more proven oil reserves than we did at the beginning of the oil depletion scare we had back at in the early 70s.
Yeah.
And the thing about it is, there is a legitimate school of thought that oil is constantly being replenished through natural processes inside the earth.
I think so. I think that's true.
I mean, they go down there and they take out all they can get out of certain places, and they ain't no more. They ain't ever gonna be no more. And they go back in 10 years and they got it again.
Right.
Well, they just can't keep seeping in from somewhere without it being replenished in some way. And the process, they can tag petroleum somewhere or another. There are certain molecules in something that's had some surface exposure over the course of development. And some of this oil that they extract, according to what they say, has never been exposed to the surface. And some has. So they're saying, we're not arguing that there's no oil produced from decomposition of organic material. We're arguing that there are other ways to produce oil, in that methane, under certain conditions, methane, which occurs naturally through different processes, under certain conditions inside the earth, combines with water and other material to produce petroleum. So they're saying you've actually got two sources of petroleum, and that the major supply of petroleum is not from organic decomposition.
Right. It's a chemical process.
Yeah.
Well, you know, one thing that
and I flunked chemistry.
I think about, on the organic side of oil production, what would you say would be the greatest source of organic activity producing oil today?
Well, as dear old Miss Gross would say, dinosaurs. Dinosaurs, dead dinosaurs.
Well, I don't think so.
Oh, not dead dinosaurs?
No.
What would it be? Peat moss?
You know, plankton in the ocean is constantly dying and falling to the floor, the seabed. To me, that's the greatest source of oil production, is that plankton. And they say that down in the Caribbean, in this triangle, that they say so many ships have disappeared, that possibly they disappeared because a gigantic methane gas bubble come up and probably just swamped the ship. And that's a feasible explanation to me. And you take the Earth being what, 3/5 water, ocean?
Something like that.
All right, you take 3/5 ocean producing all this plankton. We're talking about millions of tons on a daily basis sinking to the bottom of the ocean. That oil turning to possibly the oil, turning to something. It's going somewhere. And since oil is lighter than water, if it turns to oil, it's not going to stay on the bottom.
Well, you know, I had never thought about it.
That's one of the things I've thought about, you know, and
I never thought about it, but you realize we're not harvesting. I was looking here for something. We're not. Okay, here it is. The Sargasso Sea is home to seaweed. Now this is it. It floats around out there in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. Just vast areas of plant life, and we're not harvesting it in any way. And that goes on to lesser extent, less concentration all over the ocean. So you're right. That's processing sunlight and the natural fertilizers, and wouldn't it be done for do? You're going to have it fall to the bottom, either from being passed through a fish or just settling there. And I know it's a little bit over time, but if you can actually believe that the sands of the ocean is from the shells of ancient marine life, and you're going to have to say that over time you get a lot of oil from them dead plants too.
Well, there's an awful lot of shell matter in ocean sand. An awful lot of it comes from erosion of mountains and things that have flowed into the sea. Naturally, the continental shelf off the east coast of the United States is made up mainly of the erosion of mountains that put it there. The ocean used to be, I'm now probably at its closest point, somewhere around 156 miles to the closest point of the ocean. I can take and show you what they call sand hills right below my house, which comes up within 20 miles of my house, and that's where the ancient oceans supposedly were prior to the washing down of the Uari Mountains and the other little small mountains that were there.
Well, I can remember when Robert Beard used to have a big old clam shell displayed in the case up here. And it was, the story I heard, they had decided, yes, this is a clam shell, an ocean clam shell, and it's extinct, but this is of the type that was here 2 million years ago or something. You know where they got it?
Where?
On top of the mountain.
Oh yeah, I'm sure of that.
Of course, the mountain could have pushed up.
Right.
But
well, you can ride around the lake out here on Demery.
Yeah.
And you can see the angle of which those strata of rock go, and you can tell eventually where the epicenter of that particular monolith that come up. Maybe it wasn't a volcano or anything, but it was a monolith that lifted up the beds of an ancient lake, because all that strata of rock there was laid down in water. And so a lot of things have gone on. One thing that intrigues me, scientists will agree, and all of them agree, that matter cannot be made nor can it be destroyed. Now,
well, that is one of the laws of thermodynamics that they altered to say it couldn't be destroyed, but it could be transformed to energy.
well,
But they still contend that you can't create matter, except at the very beginning of the creation there wasn't nothing, and it just suddenly popped into everything.
well, but see, when you say you can create energy,
Well, that's a change from mass to energy. That's conservation of mass
but
energy.
you don't lose. If you dry out, say, a lump of coal, get all of the water, all of the moisture out of it, and you burn it, that residue will weigh the same as what you had before you burned it.
Yeah, but you...
So my point is, we can argue that point in a minute, but my point is, if you're burning oil and you're not destroying any matter, all you've done is change the chemical composition of that.
But what I'm talking about on the energy, if you take uranium and create a fission reaction, you will have less mass at the end of that reaction than you started with. But you'll have an equivalent amount of energy to escape.
When you say mass, if you create that nuclear fission, is that what it is?
Yep, it is. In
not
that case.
fusion, but
fusion is a different thing.
Okay. And it releases energy. Under what the scientists say are physical laws, you'd have the same weight.
No. Nope.
I don't know.
Well, okay. If you burn it, you have the same weight if you account for the oxidation. You know, it's possible you'd have more weight by burning it because you'd have some joining of oxygen molecules with some of the other stuff. So you've got to burn it in the absence of oxygen. And yes, you will. You can't burn in the absence of oxygen. But anyway, they have the law of it used to be called the conservation of mass, and that was Newton and them guys worked it out. You couldn't create or destroy matter. You could change its chemical composition. You could change it so you wouldn't recognize it, but all your mass would still be there. But when they realized that through nuclear fission, or fusion, either one, but through nuclear fission, you would end up with less mass, less weight when you got done than you started with. But you'd have an equivalent release of energy. And it just takes, because it works according to the, you've got a factor in there, the speed of light, 186,000 miles per second. You square that times itself, and you get a real big number. Well, that's what you multiply your mass transformation equation in order to get an equivalent energy. So you just lose a little bit whenever you have fission of uranium-235. When you create a fission reaction, if you could capture everything, you wouldn't lose with a little bit of uranium. You start out with maybe 10 pounds, and you end up with just a very little bit less. But because there's such a big amount of energy released from a complete transformation of mass, you account for that loss of mass and that escape of energy. And you know, you get a pretty good blast out of a little uranium if you know how to put it together. But it's still conservation, mass, and energy. And I didn't mean to get off on that because it ain't got nothing to do with the point you were trying to make.
When you put your nuclear fuel rods into a reactor, and you use them several years, you know, however long they last, I don't know how long they last, and you take those rods out, do they weigh less than they did when you put them in there?
Well, you'll have some corrosion.
Huh?
You'll have some corrosion because uranium is a metal. You'll have some corrosion. I don't know whether they'd weigh more or less. But if it didn't have anything else involved in it, they would weigh less.
But then you're saying you can create energy without losing mass.
No, if you don't see, you don't just take them out there and put two rods together and see the sparks fly. You got to immerse them in water.
I understand that.
And all that stuff. You just asked me if you take the rods out. If you take a nail out here and throw it down the road and come back in 2 years and pick it up, will it be bigger or littler?
Well, but it would be little smaller due to the oxidation of the nail and wear and tear of running over it.
Well,
but
if you drop it in bucket water,
it would not have propelled those cars down the road any faster.
No, but you don't. What I'm saying, you asked me if the rods would weigh more or less, and I don't know. they could possibly weigh more because of the process they go through. It wouldn't be any good. It'd be dirt on them. They get dirty, in other words.
But do you have to have a loss of mass
Yes.
in order to produce energy?
Yes.
Well,
In that case, you do.
well, even with your nuclear rods,
Yeah.
well, wouldn't they weigh less if...
Well, they would if there wasn't nothing else involved, but that's not what you asked me. You asked me if you took them out of that reactor, would they weigh more or less? And I'm saying I don't know. It's possible that they would weigh more, but it wouldn't be uranium you're weighing. It would be stuff that had accumulated on the thing while it was in there.
Well,
Water.
I don't know how pure the water is they put in there.
It ain't too pure because they busy sticking carbon rods down in it all the time to keep it from sparking.
Right. Okay.
You'll have less uranium in mass when you take them out than you did when you put them in there.
Possibly. Yeah,
No,
sure,
I know
you're
you
naturally going to have less because that's the reason you take them out is to put more
Well,
nuclear.
but it goes through the process of changing from one isotope to another. Just that alone changes the weight. I don't know whether you'd say it changes the mass or not. Yeah, I guess you would. I'm not sure about that. I don't know. I'm not.
I don't know. You know, I've never really delved into it, and I'm kind of using a plowboy's scientific analogy on a lot of that.
I've not had a lot of experience with nuclear reactors. I just remember we had to know a little bit about
them. It's not something I want to take out and handle and take a look at.
Well, if I had one to look at, I'd want you to be the one to look at it for me.
I don't know. You got both your eyes fixed now. You can look at it.
I know, but...
But one thing for sure.
I won't be able to hear it.
Whatever happens to the mass of uranium, you get you one of these Rainbow Restaurant biscuits and see when you get it and get through with it, you're going to have less biscuit than you started with.
Well, if you get all the good out of it, you'll have a whole lot less than you started.
You're not going to have anything left.
Well, I was going to, bring up some of that Dixie concrete, but we can talk about biscuits right up above the speed hump dip, where they got them there 99-cent bologna biscuits.
Right.
And they've got them there $2.99.
$2.99. They got the $2.99 plate advertised out there in the front.
They got a whole bunch of stuff for that. They got 2 eggs and meat and bread and gravy and grits maybe, and all that stuff.
Right.
Rainbow Restaurant, home of the best breakfast in this town.
The best breakfast known to man and the most reasonable.
Yeah, price-wise.
Is that right?
But I was going to kind of mention that if you were in bed that stuff in some of that Dixie concrete, it'd last forever.
I guarantee it looked like to me, rather than suspending those rods in water, they ought to put them in Dixie concrete.
Well, they need to move them around, I think. But Dixie Concrete, they got concrete and all sorts of septic system components, and they got anything to do with concretes, and they got a good product and a good attitude. And Bob says they drive on their side of the road.
Yeah, I know they do, yeah. Because I meet them, usually about every day.
I'm always afraid you're going to jinx us when I'm going to sneeze and run over me on the way home.
Yeah, that'd be a bad time to sneeze.
One of them fellers, his car stopped in front of him up here one day. I was there, and he managed to get off the road and didn't hit anybody, and done a magnificent little bit of driving, I thought. But if he hadn't been paying attention, there'd have been a
you better keep your eye on the road, because people up here, so help me. I pulled out in front of a car that was way down the road this morning.
Yep.
And this happened so many times. They drive like they are driving a missile.
Yeah.
That there's no way they can veer to the left and go around. I mean, they had no other cars coming, just this one. That one never changed lane or anything. And I run on up about 35, 40. And they are standing up on end
Yeah.
to keep from running over me, and they had plenty of room to switch lanes or apply the brakes or whatever, or just take the foot off the pedal and slow down a little bit. But they know one speed, and that's just as hard as they can go in one direction.
I know it. And if the speed limit's 40, that's a suggestion to go 60.
I'd be going up 45 mile an hour, and somebody'd be just trying to push me up the road, 40 in a 45 zone, just trying to push me up the road, and probably back there cussing because I'm not running 55 or 60.
Well, if I'm on the right-hand lane and they're going 40 mile an hour and they don't like it, that's tough. But what aggravates me, you can't just get over in the turning lane anytime you want to, in the left lane. Down there, down toward Jacksburg down there, if you're going to make a left turn down there, there's a dentist's office down there I used to go to a lot. If you go down there and if you've got a bunch of cars, you can't just decide you're there and then get over. And if you try to get over a half a mile before you get there, so you be there, and you're not going over 40, people just get so mad and they start waving all them funny gestures.
Well, I know that, but let me ask you, isn't the speed limit the same in that lane as it is in the other lane?
Yes, sir. But if you're, I mean, I don't feel obligated to go faster than the speed limit, but I wouldn't be in that lane if I didn't have business in that lane.
Right.
But whenever they start getting all excited and start, you know, doing all them hand gestures, well, you know, my eyesight's better than it used to be, but I still have to slow down and see what that is they're doing.
See what they want, yeah.
Yeah, sometimes, you know, I'll have to get down so I can wave at them. You don't want to wreck.
Right.
In other words, the more they cut up, the slower I go.
Well, you know, I've never seen so many people in my life that has to be somewhere in such a hurry as they are up here.
I think they all left earlier.
You know, you can go to Knoxville and they don't drive nearly as fast. They're not nearly as pushy.
But it used to be altogether different. When I was raised here, people here drove reasonable. And over at Knoxville, I was surprised at how many, I mean, nobody ever stopped for a caution light. There was always 3 cars run every red light.
Well, don't you know that
But
you speed up on yellow and slow down on green?
Well, you know, Ed Wilson said run like hell to beat the red one. But they pulled him over. The cop pulled him over one day and said, "Don't you know what that yellow light means?" He said, "Yeah, buddy, it means run like hell to beat the red one." He gave him a ticket anyway.
That's about the truth.
But they've changed driving here. People forgot how to drive. There's so many Ohio people come down here, and they've infected us. And these people here drive like the Ohio people used to drive.
Right. I had one driving, I think maybe a Chevrolet Suburban or one of those close to a Suburban, maybe the next one under that. Just pushing me up the road the other morning.
Yeah.
And usually I don't get over for them, but I was in the left lane, and I said, well, what I did, I had to get in the turn lane, and here he goes by me like a bat out of hell. I looked up the road, and he turned in the place.
Yeah. Yeah, I know.
Turned in. I bet he hadn't gone 600 feet before he turned in.
I come out, there was a fella following me out yesterday morning. I'm going to say he wasn't riding my bumper. He was driving right, but we come to a place where he could pass. And he was going faster than I'd been going because the road was wet. But he didn't crowd me in, and he didn't pass on the curve, but he passed me. Then there's a car in front of me. The reason I was driving like I was going slower than I usually do, but the road was wet, and there's a car in front of me, and I was, you know, holding back, keeping crowding him. He went down there and passed him, and he outrun both of us then, till we got to the 4 lane, and we sat there and waited on. He got on, waited on him to get on the road, and then we come on out. He didn't gain. He gained 2 car lengths. And then I know he took more chances of getting there than we did, because when the road's wet, you know, and we ain't got no ice yet, but it ain't gonna be long. We're gonna have ice. You just don't. You need to drive like you got a little sense.
Right.
Don't drive like me and Bob. Drive like you got a little sense.
Well, I usually drive at a pretty good clip, you know, but I noticed, you know, with the 25 mile an hour speed zone out here at the White Bridge, You know, I'll top that hill like about 30, and then I'll let it kind of drift down. Somebody will pass me right on that bridge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
TV.
TV. Hello, gentlemen.
Hey, how are you?
Pretty good. I heard your discussion earlier there, and I'm doing without the benefit of video right now. I'm strictly got audio. It's not yours. It's where I moved from.
Okay.
But
Okay.
the discussion y'all were having a few minutes ago on matter and whatever and so forth.
Yeah, buddy.
Yeah.
that was getting interesting. But anyhow.
Did we make you think we know what we were doing?
Oh boy, I'll tell you what, it sounded good. I got when I was in third grade, they taught me something, but they left something out.
Yeah.
Whenever,
They left something out when we was in third grade too.
yeah,
That's the first time we was in the third grade. The third or fourth time we was in the third grade. We
I
caught
finally
on.
got the hang of it the third time.
Well, gentlemen, one of the y'all kept relating to the weight loss.
Yeah.
Okay.
Bob did. There's a difference in weight and mass.
Right, there is. Now, and weight is determined by gravitational pull on whatever matter you're talking about.
That's correct.
Okay. Now, does the weight change with altitude?
Yeah.
Okay. So, I don't
Inversely square, according to the inverse square of the distance.
Okay. That's what I was getting at. But now, are you all talking about fact or theory whenever you're talking about...
Fact.
You're talking about fact?
Yes.
Okay. Now, how did they prove the fact whenever you oxidize something, and how do they weigh the energy that you receive off of it? In other words, it has to be...
That's not... You don't lose any mass when you oxidize something.
well, I didn't say mass weight then. How
You don't lose any weight whenever you oxidize something.
Okay. That's where I'm... How do you prove that in theory? How do you weigh whenever you oxidize anything? Anything that oxidizes creates energy, correct?
Mm-hmm. Okay, you put it in a sealed container.
Okay, this is the point I was getting to, sealed.
You put it in a sealed container. You inject enough oxygen to sustain a flame, or combustion, to sustain combustion, and you burn it.
Okay.
And you know how much weight you put in oxygen. You know how much weight you had originally from the material, and you'll end up having more weight inside that container than you started with, and the more weight will be the amount of oxygen that you injected.
Right.
Okay.
Now, if you put that same thing, and I know you can't do this, but this is the way you could do it if you could contain it. If you took 2 nuclear fuel rods and put in there, and you had them sealed in such a way nothing could get out except heat. Now you let heat out of that there other container, and light too, because you use a clear container, you let heat and light out. You wouldn't necessarily have to let the light out, but the heat's going to escape. If you don't let the heat out, then you've not proved anything, because you do want to let the heat out. But in the case of a nuclear reaction, the heat that you get out from, or any sort of energy, you're going to get some radiation, you're going to get you're going to get nuclear radiation, and you're going to get heat, all sorts of energy coming out of that thing. But if you account for that and the original amount of mass, you're going to end up with the same number. But you're going to have less mass inside that sealed container when it's over with than you did to start with.
But you're going to have the same weight, is that what you're saying?
No, you're going to have less weight, less mass, but you're going to have something different. You're going to have energy. That's what this whole thing about Einstein and he finally quantified it, but they've been trying to figure this thing out for a while, and went through several experiments and stuff, and come to the conclusion that you couldn't create or destroy matter, but you could transform it to energy.
Right.
And if you look, the old books, it used to be referred to as the conservation of mass. And that's what they called it 150 years ago. They couldn't violate the laws of physics, which said, thermodynamics, which said you could neither create nor destroy matter. But they don't call it that now. They call it the conservation of mass energy.
Okay.
Let me ask you something.
Okay.
If you put, both of you, if you put fuel rods and water into a lead container, all right, which will radiate heat, but will not radiate radioactivity,
Yeah.
okay? Are you saying that once they react in that water in a lead container, that they will lose weight
Yes, sir.
from the energy?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, it boils down to the fact that you have to be able to
How's that mass get out of there?
It don't. It comes out as energy. Energy and mass are interchangeable.
Okay, when we're talking about energy, we're talking about heat, right?
Well, heat and light, and he's figured out a way here maybe to contain the radiation so that you don't get any nuclear components out there, but you're still going to get heat.
Okay.
I mean, in the way he defined his experiment, that's the whole point. Energy is interchangeable. And if you take, this is not the way you'd figure it, but let's say you had 1 gram of mass, and you want to know how much energy you get out of it. Well, I don't know what the units would be, maybe joules or something, but anyway, to figure out how much energy you get out of that 1 gram of mass, you multiply it by 186,280 and change.
What's that, speed of light?
Yeah, times 186,280 again, and you took that 1 gram of mass and you multiply it times that big number twice, and that's how much, I don't know what units you end up with, but that's how you determine how much, yeah.
Energy has the most common way that we describe, or the word we use to identify energy is calories.
Yeah, well, yeah, but calories is a unit too. You can, just like you can rate a light bulb in horsepower instead of watts.
That's correct, yeah. But I know that formula, I can tell you what it is. But let me get back to another question. In nuclear, you got fission and fusion.
Yeah.
And I'm getting mixed up right now. I believe fusion is non-radioactive. Is that correct, or is it the other way around?
Well, it's not. You don't need nuclear material to have fusion. What you do get some radiation out of it, but it's not a sustained reaction. What you get is you have 2 hydrogen molecules go together. I mean, the most common kind of fusion is you put 2 hydrogen molecules together and you get a helium. But you also have some extra nucleus components, I guess neutrons as a matter of fact, but you've got too much junk. If you take two hydrogen atoms contain more than enough material to make a helium atom. But if you combine them, if you put them under the right pressure and temperature, they will combine and they'll fuse. And they'll come together and make 1 helium, but you still got a few parts left over, and that's where you get your energy.
Okay.
And in that case, you're changing mass, trading mass for energy again. And then in fission, what you've got is, I don't know the process, but I don't know exactly.
That's splitting it.
Yeah, it makes you get them. That was mine, I think, Bob.
That's yours and mine.
Mine. In fission, you bang them together and there's a whole bunch of spare parts falls out. You don't have a fusion in it. Now the hydrogen bomb, they used a fission reaction, uranium, in order to create the conditions to fuse hydrogen.
Hydrogen, mine.
So that's where you get so much more oomph out of that. You get the first reaction. You set off a TNT type explosion and crash these your properly constructed uranium chunks into each other, and when that happens, in the presence of hydrogen in the right conditions, you get fusion. So you create a miniature sun. And you get much more energy out of that, and you don't use as much uranium. You use hydrogen.
Okay.
You get some helium and some bang.
Right.
Well, now, that hydrogen has never been used in, well, for military purposes. It's only been tested. Is that correct?
Well,
Because
that's right. They didn't use it. They've set them off several times.
I'm saying they were tested, but they weren't used in.
Yeah, the only kind of military action we ever had was the two bombs over Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and they were both uranium bombs.
Right.
If you fellas get enough, let me know there. But it's interesting. What Bob brought up there is the water that the rods are submerged in.
Mm-hmm.
You know, pure water is non-conductive. If I'm correct.
Yeah, but you're not relying on conduction here.
Okay. Now,
the purpose of the water is to keep them cool.
Well, okay. Is it to keep? Well, it serves two purposes.
And to transfer the heat.
Yeah,
And
that's what
transfer the heat.
by doing that you keep them cool. There wouldn't be any point to keep them cool if you didn't get anything out of it. You use that heat that you extract from them while cooling them to make you steam.
That's right. Well,
And that is, the water creates steam.
okay. When we go back to electricity, we keep going back to the electricity being generated by steam being transporting the energy to turn it from.
Yeah, you got
to
turbines.
electrical.
You
But
use.
we keep going back to the primary thing is heating the water. Of course,
Yeah.
we heated it with wood at first, and
Mhm.
then coal and diesel and whatever. Then till we got to atomic means. Now, there is a. I'm trying to think of what it is. There's a thermal generator somewhere. Do you know what I'm talking about? Where all they have is just like a huge chimney that creates a thermal with a black base, just like a draw on a chimney. You know
Where's it get its heat?
It gets its heat from thermal due to the fact, let's say like it'd be like having let's say you put out a tent, like in a big tent revival with black plastic that's so many feet off the ground that feeds up into a pipe, which creates a thermal.
Okay.
You follow me?
Yeah.
And turns the generator. Now, there's some buildings right now that are built, and I believe Japan is where it's at, or some other country, that the center of the building is like this. It has tubes that are going up the thing.
Okay.
That it generates its own electricity.
Well,
thermal.
I don't know how much they get out of it, but what they're doing, they're using sun
Right.
and nuclear. You know, the heat at the center of the Earth has got to do with decomposition of radioactive elements. And you've got, but I'd say mostly you get very little of that from what you're talking about. You have that ambient temperature of the Earth, but it's
No, I'm not. They're not dependent on ambient temperature now. They're depending on sunlight, because the bottom of this thing would put you in the mind of wait a minute, let me back up now. Not on the building part. You may be correct on the building part, but I'm talking about where this thing was experimented with in the desert or someplace, where that they put out this like black vinyl, so many feet off the ground.
But you're using sunlight even if you're just drawing it from, extracting it from the Earth, because that's what's heating up the surface of the Earth anyway, is sunlight.
Well, gentlemen, it's good talking to you.
Yeah.
You know,
if you want any more physics lessons, you just come back.
Tune in.
There's tons and tons of stuff that we could discuss on this, and I'm sure, well, there may be somebody out there that could.
And believe it or not, we've actually had some viewers that were watching this thing.
Well, you know, we're going to actually next week have a Wood Stove 101.
Yep.
Let me ask a question, gentlemen. Back, of course, I can make a comment about this storm and whatever and so forth, but anyhow, if we go back a few days ago, Donald Trump offered $5 million to be given to President Obama's favorite charity, any charity he chose.
Michelle,
okay, that's his charity. Okay. But all he asked was for his school records.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, that raises.
We'll match that. We'll match that offer.
Well, here it raised two questions though. First question was, what is it that Mr. Trump is looking for
Publicity.
in those records that are worth $5 million?
He's looking for publicity.
Okay. Now, if that's publicity, fine. Now let me ask another question. What is it that's in those records that President Obama will forego $5 million to any charity of his choice? That could be children's, youth.
He don't want to lower the stature of the presidential office.
Don't give me that crap.
No, I mean he can't go around jumping on every bet comes through.
Right.
Well, but here's that's not a bet. But here's the point. There is something in those records that it's worth in excess of $5 million for him to keep from the public, to keep secret. Because here's the point I'm trying to make. That money was to be donated to charity. That could be to cancer research, St. Jude's, or anything.
Yep.
Now, why there is something, got to be something. It ain't just a roll in the hay with some lady or something like
It's
that.
beneath the dignity of the presidential office.
The way I
Oh,
look,
come on. Fellas, dignity, my, you know what? You know what's going on in the Oval Office. You know what goes on.
the way I look at it, if he was all that proud of his school record, he would have already had them made public prior to all this.
Well,
I'd make mine public for prices right.
Right.
Well, but the point I'm trying to make is, though, there is something in there. Since this money was not to be given to him to his benefit, it was to be given to some good source, whether that be cancer research or St. Jude's or whatever. There's $5 million laying there on the table to go for a good cause, and all he had to produce was his school records. Now, his school records he had to pass the test and whatever, or he wouldn't have the certificate. So there's something.
Well, I've got a suggestion for you.
Put it on me.
Got your pencil?
Yep, I can find me something to write on. Hold on just a second. Okay, go ahead.
Go to WND.com.
WND? Okay.
And let's see, I don't know whether I've got time to hunt the thing, but if you shop around there a little, you'll find some interesting stuff.
Okay, I'll do it. Sure will. But gentlemen, the first thought I thought was just like you was, that Trump was looking for some publicity.
Yep.
If that was the only thing involved, the president would take his $5 million life at him and show him the records, and he didn't do it. So there's something in there, and I don't know whether we'll ever know it, but for some reason, and the reason I'm saying this is because the way it was offered to be given to some good cause.
Well, he couldn't legally take that money anyhow while he was sitting president.
Well, I don't know what the big requirements there are, but the president only makes $400,000 a year. Look how many years of his wages that would be, or his salary that would be. That would put him years of hate. But now, like I say, if I back up, I withdraw that because it wasn't to go to him. It was to go to some
charity.
good cause. So anyhow, gentlemen, he just clipped some good cause for $5 million. Gentlemen,
Yes,
I
sir.
appreciate your time.
See you. Thank you.
Hey,
We got to tell them about, you want to tell them about Wilson's gas, because we're using it right over there.
yeah, well, I'm feeling the effects of it right now. I've got a little Mr. Heater that I use some. I guarantee you I have to turn it off. It just gets too hot, you know. But you can go down, some fella says, I'm going to go down Sawmill Hill Holler and get some gas. Says, he's as good as anybody, isn't he? I said, good as anybody? I said, he's better. I said, he's going to put 20 pounds of gas in that cylinder of yours. You take it somewhere else, you might get somewhere between 15 and 20.
Right down there in the middle of the road.
Right down there in the middle of the road. I said, you take it on down there and tell him to put some of that good winter propane in your tank.
562-5444.
Wilson's propane. That's for all your propane needs.
We got 4 or 5 minutes here to tell them about Napa and Vital Care. Which one you want to do first?
Well, I'll probably do Napa first, because if you need to do Vital Care, you might not be in shape to do any more.
Well, Napa is the National Auto Parts Association. The local dealer's up across from the IGA, and they are at 562-9406 or 562-2529, and they got parts for anything.
Anything
you can get a buggy tire up there.
That's an independent franchise operation owned by, I guess, Randy Spradlin right here in La Follette. And Randy, be surprised what all he can get for you and how knowledgeable he is.
Yeah, he's associated with that National Auto Parts Association.
Right, yeah. He's very, very knowledgeable, and you go in there and tell him what your problem is, and he'll tell you what you need. And that's Napa Auto Parts.
And just we hope it don't happen to you, chance that you need a ride in an ambulance. You know, Vital Care has got the only mobile ventilator in this town.
Right, I know that.
In this county.
I know that.
They can haul your hand in somewhere and you get to breathe on the way.
Let me ask you, what if you need 2 of them at the same time? Do you stop down there at one of the hot dog joints to get 2 straws, or what?
Well, I don't know, but I'm going to tell you this. If you don't use Vital Care in a situation like that, you have to hold your breath.
Said that right. You're going to hold it all right.
You all might want to keep Vital Care in mind if you get to needing some serious medical transportation.
You see somebody going up the road with somebody up there giving artificial respiration to them, you know that they don't have a ventilator on that ambulance.
562-59370. 9370.
Yeah.
562-9370.
Vital
Don't
Care.
confuse it with 911, but if you forget it, call 911 and tell them to hook you up with Vital Care.
Right, there you go. 562-9370, Vital Care.
Do them like Bob does me. Use their phone number to find them.
Right, there you go.
Well, it's been a pleasure. We've had several viewers tonight and had some call-ins we didn't get hooked up. I can't do as many phone calls here because I don't have the same setup, but appreciate you watching. Appreciate you calling. Would appreciate it if you didn't shoot at us. And be careful, be safe tomorrow night. Tomorrow night's Halloween.
Right, we'll be there at 8 o'clock.
Bob will be there at 8 o'clock.
Right, and I'll ride in on my broom.
Channel 12.
Right.
And also on the UGG TV. But you'll have to get your UGG TV at the lower part of the page because it won't be on this particular section tomorrow night because Ronnie's going somewhere else.
Yeah, Ronnie's going to go.
Spooking.
He and his girlfriend are going to ride off on a broom together.
Yeah, I've got to go grease her broom for Happy trails, everybody.
Folks, appreciate you being with us. See you tomorrow night.
Bye.